Lost in Thought from Blue Dwarf. Podcast voiced by Andy Longman. Original post written by Andy Jones. Chief of Security, Rosette mused, almost a week after the inspector had said it. She'd been ecstatic at the time, having spent the entire evening off duty at Parrots. Now she was back on duty, sat with her feet on the desk reading a report of readiness. To be honest, it wasn't good. Previous chiefs had written them to sound better than they were, and she could see why. The security team was in a terrible state. It was only through the strength of a few in the past that they had survived doing the job that they were meant to do. Jack, he had been an utter powerhouse. Of all the reports of his strength, made him sound superhuman, especially considering he didn't even use a gun. Chris Harris, the previous chief, wasn't so far behind either. She didn't have their strength or their abilities. She had to whip them into shape and do it fast before something bad happened. Then it happened. The explosions that rocked the ship. Falling from her chair, she hit her head on the hard metal floor before calling out, "Holly! What the hell was that?" Nothing came back in response. "Smeg," she cursed, grabbing the radio system that was still there for situations like this. "This is LeChance. What was that?" she asked. The response came in quickly but hit her hard. "Explosion in engineering. Half the engineers are gone. We've already set up a perimeter and the emergency bulkheads are in place." "Any survivors?" she asked. "Not yet." "Keep me informed," she said, dropping the radio and staring ahead at the wall in front of her. "It wasn't meant to be like this," she said, a tear falling from her cheek. In her head she saw her old house in London, her parents and servants. She had everything. She had more at her birth than Seymour had ever had, yet he acted like an arse towards everyone. "What am I supposed to do?" she asked, her head in her hands. "I'm supposed to be a rich girl." She slammed a hand on her desk and forced back the tears of her old life. Wiping her face, she headed out into the ship, towards the drive room, her radio in hand. At least then she could coordinate better with the captain. That was her intention, at least. Shortly she arrived at the drive room. "Where's Jay?" she asked, looking around. "Katrina was in engineering," Amber said solemnly. You can contact me with this," she said, handing over a spare radio. At least until Holly's back on." With that, she wandered down the corridors of the Blue Dwarf, staring at each wall, each identical wall made of metals formed in such ways as to create passages through space, safe for people to walk. Meant to be safe. She wandered until she stopped in front of a door, walking without thinking. The door opened, she entered, walked to the back of the room, and lay on one of the beds, not paying attention to where she was. This podcast is a work of fiction and is in no way endorsed, approved, or even liked by the creators of Red Dwarf. For more stories and information, visit bluedwarf.co.uk.